Hello everyone. Today we would like to discuss some pointers which will be helpful in reviewing workbooks effectively. So let's look at them right now. So parameters for reviewing are factual incorrectness, wrong or incomplete or missing information, feasibility, grade appropriateness, inappropriate terminology or title, open-endedness, spacing issues, illustrations or images, referencing, repetition of questions. So let's take up each one of these parameters one by one and elucidate them with some examples. Factual incorrectness. Answers to each question must be matched with the answer guide. Here you can see a worksheet and its corresponding answer guide. So let's read the questions that are there in the worksheet and their corresponding answers. So the first question says, define the term saturation. And the answer says, saturation is defined as a point where no more of the solute can be dissolved in the solvent to form a solution. So that is a pretty good answer. Let's look at the second question. Choose the correct option. A saturated solution of salt and water is A. Maximum volume of water with fixed amount of salt in it. B. Maximum amount of salt in a fixed amount of water. Now the answer to this is actually B, but as you can see this is incorrect. It's written A. We'll have to change that and make it correct. Let's look at the fourth question now. It says, is it possible that 4 tablespoons of sugar form a saturated solution in a glass of water, but 10 tablespoons of the same tablespoon forms a saturated solution in a mug of water at the same temperature? Give reasons for your answer. If you look at the answer guide, the answer is incomplete. It just says yes, but the explanation here is missing. So in this case, you'll have to actually change that and provide an explanation. So incorrect question in the worksheet. Now let's look at this worksheet. In question 3 in the crossword puzzle, for going down 2, it says materials that not conduct heat well. First of all, here not should be omitted from this sentence, because if you look up in a cross section, number 5, the sentence already exists. Materials that do not conduct heat well. So this should actually be materials that conduct heat well. Moreover, as a sentence, this is grammatically incorrect. So now let's look at the second parameter, which is wrong, incorrect, or missing instructions. Let's look at this worksheet, actually question 2 of this S2.1 worksheet. It says label the parts of the plant below, but it doesn't make any mention of completing the words given on the left hand side. So this is a perfect example of missing instructions. Another thing is that these blanks on the left hand side, they do not help the students understand that there are multiple letters to fill in them. Now let's take another example. As you can see here in this worksheet, there are 2 circuits on which all questions are based. But in question number 5, is there a difference in the brightness of the bulbs if there are 2 or 3 bulbs in the circuit? This question. it doesn't specify which circuit has to be referred to while answering this question. Now let's move on to the next parameter, which is feasibility. The questions in the worksheets should be worded in such a way that the students are able to do them either in class or at home, however expected. For example, if in a question we ask them to look around or out the window and count the number of rag pickers they can spot, such a sight is not possible in highly urban surroundings. So the next parameter is inappropriate terminology. Let's look at this worksheet. Question 1 wrongly mentions a wind vane to be a tool for measuring wind direction, whereas actually it is a tool used for finding wind direction. So this is an example to show that use of an improper word or a term can become highly misleading. Now let's talk about the next parameter, which is spacing issues. The space provided for an answer should be appropriate and in the right format. For example, in question 2 of this worksheet, the space provided for writing down 5 real-life situations is insufficient and should be formatted properly. Our next parameter is illustrations or images. Here is a worksheet, and you'll see here that these pictures are supposed to be depicting cities, but they do not remarkably represent Mumbai or Delhi as has been mentioned in the question. For example, Delhi could have been represented by showing prominent heritage sites like the Red Fort or India Gate, and Gate of India picture could have been used for showing Mumbai. Let's look now at grade inappropriateness, which is our next parameter. Look here, we are talking about irradiation technique, and we expect a grade 7 student to only know the technique. But question 4 asks about the doses required for various food items, which is difficult for a grade 7 student to answer. So this is supposed to be a knowledge-based question and nothing else. So our next parameter is open-endedness. Let's look at this worksheet. It talks about identification of festivals according to the given pictures. So picture A here can have multiple expected answers. For example, diyas are generally used in Diwali, but are also used in festivals like Durga Puja, Dussehra, Gurpurab, etc. So such questions representing ambiguity should be avoided. In this worksheet, question 3 says, which method according to you is the healthiest? Here, students have been taught different methods of cooking. So they may choose whichever method they think is the healthiest and will give reasons for the same. Now let's look at the answer guide. It says moist method. So as you can see, the answer guide is providing a very specific answer. But for an open-ended question like this, the answer should not be so specific. Students can choose any of the methods, so the answer guide should actually say answer may vary student to student. Now let's look at referencing. Here is a worksheet about identifying celestial bodies. So you can see that we have pictures of planets, very beautiful ones. But if you look closely below each picture, you will see that the source of the picture has been mentioned. So source says wikipedia.com. However, we do not mention any outside references for our illustrations or images in our material. So this will need to be removed. So now let's look at our last parameter, last but definitely not the least, which is repetition of questions. Here you can see we have two worksheets that are successive in history. The first worksheet as 2.1, it has images of historical sources, 4 of them, and then it asks students to write the type of source that it is, followed by the prediction of what this source tells us about the history of that time, right? Now, if you look at the following worksheet, which is the S2.2, it has the same images, and even though the format may look different, the questions are absolutely the same. So this is, I think, a perfect example of repetition of questions, and this will need to be looked at very carefully. Now let's look at another example. This is from a maths workbook. Now this is S14.1 and S15.1. If you look at the second part of both these worksheets, there's 3 necklaces with beads, and it's asking the students to count the beads and write the numbers on the tag. Now if you look at both these questions, they're absolutely identical. So rather than repeating questions, we need to actually provide more interesting questions. So one of these will definitely need to be changed. We looked at very basic examples, and I think once you will start reviewing, you will find many more examples along the way. So we wish you the best of luck. Thank you for listening.